They tell you to chase happiness, that it's the ultimate goal, the end game, the reason to wake up each morning and keep going. From childhood, you're bombarded with subtle messages that a good life is a happy life, and a happy life is filled with smiling faces, perfect moments, and the absence of pain. But what if that's the trap? What if the very act of chasing happiness ensures we never actually find it? Look around. The modern world has more wealth, convenience, and entertainment than any other time in human history. Yet depression rates are rising, anxiety is common, and a persistent feeling of emptiness gnaws at people even in moments of so-called joy. It's as if the closer we get to happiness, the more it slips through our fingers. This isn't a coincidence. It's the consequence of a dangerous illusion that happiness is something to be acquired like a possession, a status, or a reward. It's the result of decades of cultural programming, where happiness is not an experience, but a product, a brand, a performance. We scroll through curated feeds of smiling faces, exotic vacations, and aesthetic brunches, not realizing that we're comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. The pressure to be happy becomes another source of stress, another standard we're failing to meet. And the irony, the more we strive for it, the more miserable we become. Happiness has become the currency of social validation, the metric of success. If you're not happy, something must be wrong with you. You're broken, ungrateful, not trying hard enough. So we medicate, we overconsume, we distract ourselves with noise. We suppress anything that doesn't fit the aesthetic of joy, grief, boredom, doubt, fear. But all of this rests on one deeply flawed assumption, that happiness is the natural human condition, that we're supposed to feel good all the time, that suffering is an error to be fixed. It's not. Pain, uncertainty, sadness, these are not malfunctions. They're data, signals from our inner world telling us something is wrong, or perhaps that something is deeply meaningful. To chase happiness blindly is to live with a constant sense of failure, to believe that every negative emotion is a problem, to treat life like a self-improvement project with happiness as the finish line. But life doesn't work that way. Maybe happiness isn't something to be pursued, but something that emerges, unpredictably, briefly, and only when we're not looking for it. And maybe, just maybe, we've been chasing a ghost, a polished, sterilized version of life that doesn't exist, sold to us by people who profit from our pursuit. So the question becomes, if happiness is a trap, then what exactly have we been running toward before happiness became a trend? Before, it was something sold in commercials and written into self-help books. It was something far more ambiguous. In fact, for most of human history, happiness wasn't even considered the point of life. In ancient Greece, the word most closely related to happiness was eudaimonia, but it didn't mean pleasure, comfort, or emotional satisfaction. It meant flourishing, living in accordance with virtue, fulfilling your nature. For thinkers like Aristotle, happiness wasn't something you felt, it was something you earned through struggle, self-discipline, and the pursuit of wisdom. Contrast that with today's notion of happiness, a constant emotional high, a carefree life insulated from discomfort. The ancient world would have found that idea absurd, even dangerous to them. Suffering was inevitable and often meaningful. Pain wasn't an interruption to life, it was part of life. The Stoics of Rome took this even further. To them, the key to peace wasn't chasing pleasure, but learning to become indifferent to it. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who wrote in the quiet hours of war and death, argued that life's only true happiness came from accepting reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. The pursuit of pleasure, he believed, was a form of slavery. The more you crave comfort, the more you suffer when it's taken from you. For centuries, religious traditions across the world echoed this skepticism of happiness. Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, all recognized that life is filled with pain and that trying to escape it was futile. Instead, they offered something else: salvation, enlightenment, surrender. Not happiness, but transcendence. So what changed? The Enlightenment, the age of reason, individualism, and scientific revolution. For the first time, thinkers began to imagine that maybe suffering wasn't destiny. Maybe it could be fixed. Maybe human beings had the right to be happy. The American Declaration of Independence famously enshrined the pursuit of happiness as an unalienable right, not just a dream, but a political principle. But even then, the idea was nuanced. To pursue happiness didn't mean chasing personal pleasure at all costs. It meant the freedom to live well, to seek meaning, to build a life of value. It was tied to ethics, not escapism. The real turning point came later, with the rise of capitalism and consumer culture. As industrial society took hold, something profound shifted. People were no longer seen as citizens or spiritual beings, but as consumers, and in a consumer economy, happiness became a tool, a metric, a marketing strategy. If people could be convinced that happiness was a product, something you could buy, wear, drive, eat, or achieve, then they could be kept in a perpetual state of wanting. And people who are always wanting are always spending. Thus, the modern myth was born that happiness is just one purchase, one promotion, one self-improvement course away. This rebranding of happiness didn't just happen by accident. In the 20th century, psychologists like Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, pioneered the use of subconscious manipulation in advertising. He didn't sell products. He sold lifestyles, identities, aspiration. Cigarettes weren't just tobacco. They were torches of freedom. Cars weren't just transportation. They were symbols of success. Everything was tied back to how it made you feel, and what feeling was more universal, more desirable than happiness over time. Happiness was stripped of its moral and philosophical roots and replaced with something shallow, dopamine hits, fleeting pleasure, surface-level joy. A smile became the symbol of a successful life, and suffering was seen not as a teacher, but a failure. But history tells a different story. Some of the most impactful people, revolutionaries, artists, thinkers, lived in deep discomfort. They were tormented, isolated, often misunderstood, but they weren't failures. Their suffering wasn't a detour. It was the crucible in which their insight was forged. And that's the paradox. By turning happiness into an expectation, we've turned life into a test we can't pass. We are measured not by our resilience, our depth, or our courage, but by how good we feel. Yet the people who shaped history rarely felt good. They felt something else, something deeper, a sense of duty, a calling, a need to speak truth or create beauty or challenge injustice, no matter the personal cost. And so the modern obsession with happiness appears not as progress, but as amnesia, a forgetting of the richness of life, the pain, the struggle, the sacred weight of being alive. Happiness, in its original form, was not an escape. It was the reward for living well. Today, it's become the thing we chase when we've forgotten how to live at all. The more we chase happiness, the further it seems to drift away. This isn't just a poetic notion. It's a psychological paradox rooted in the very nature of our minds. We live in an age where happiness has become synonymous with success. It's an aspiration in every self-help book, a promise in every advertisement, and the goal of every motivational speaker. Yet, despite this overwhelming focus, studies show that people, especially in developed countries, aren't becoming happier. In fact, happiness levels have remained stagnant or even declined. Despite material wealth and increased comfort, it's as though we've been handed the wrong map, following a path that leads us in circles. So, what's going on? Why is the pursuit of happiness itself so paradoxical? One key concept to understand here is hedonic adaptation, also known as the hedonic treadmill. It's the idea that no matter how good or bad our circumstances are, we eventually return to a baseline level of happiness. When something positive happens, a promotion, a new relationship, an expensive vacation, we feel a burst of joy. But after a while, we adjust, the novelty wears off, and the happiness fades. The same occurs with negative events. A breakup, a failure, or a setback may bring sadness. But over time, we acclimate and return to our baseline. This adaptive mechanism is crucial for our survival. It prevents us from becoming overwhelmed by constant highs or lows, helping us to regulate our emotions. But it also means that the pursuit of happiness through external circumstances, wealth, status, possessions is inherently flawed. We can't sustain a permanent state of joy. or fulfillment, no matter how hard we try. It's as if we're on a treadmill, running as fast as we can to reach a destination that's always just out of reach. But it's not just our external circumstances that limit our happiness. There's a deeper, more insidious force at play: the comparison trap. In a world dominated by social media, we're constantly comparing ourselves to others. Whether we're scrolling through Instagram, watching YouTube, or simply interacting with friends, we're bombarded with curated images of happiness, the success, the vacations, the perfect relationships. Everyone else seems to have it all figured out, and we, by contrast, feel inadequate, incomplete. This constant comparison fosters a sense of envy, frustration, and insecurity. We believe that happiness is something external, something that others have that we need to acquire. The more we see others living seemingly perfect lives, the more we feel that something is missing in ours. This only intensifies the urge to pursue happiness, but it also sets us up for perpetual disappointment. No matter how much we achieve or how many possessions we accumulate, it never feels like enough. We're always chasing something just beyond our grasp. This brings us to another paradox. The pursuit of happiness can lead to unhappiness. In a 2010 study by psychologist Tim Kasser, participants who focused on intrinsic goals like personal growth and relationships reported higher levels of well-being than those who pursued extrinsic goals like wealth and fame. The more we chase external markers of success, the more we disconnect from the things that actually bring us joy. Meaningful relationships, a sense of purpose, and personal development. The constant striving for an idealized form of happiness pushes us further from what is truly fulfilling. Consider the case of the success trap. In our careers, in our personal lives, we're often told that the next promotion, the next milestone, the next acquisition will bring us the happiness we seek. But once we achieve it, we find ourselves empty. The goalpost moves, the thrill of success fades, and we're left chasing the next big thing. This cycle is exhausting, and it leads many to wonder if happiness was ever the point at all. But what's even more dangerous is the illusion that we can control happiness. We are constantly sold the idea that we can mold our lives into a perfect image, that with enough effort, planning, and discipline, happiness is within our reach. We're told that success, financial freedom, or self-improvement will lead to an uninterrupted flow of joy. Yet, in reality, life is messy, it's unpredictable, and attempting to force happiness through willpower alone can lead to burnout, anxiety, and a sense of deep dissatisfaction. The more we demand happiness, the less likely we are to experience it. The underlying problem is a deep misunderstanding of what happiness truly is. We've come to see it as a destination, something to be acquired, achieved, or attained. But this is the trap. As soon as we view happiness as something external, something to be obtained, we inadvertently disconnect from the present moment. We stop living for the journey and instead live for the destination. Happiness is not a permanent state, nor is it a product that can be bought. It's a fleeting experience, an emotional response to particular events, moments, and contexts. It comes and goes like a wave. Sometimes we can catch it, ride it for a while, but it will inevitably recede. And that's okay. Life isn't about perpetuating an artificial state of joy. It's about being present, engaging with life as it is, without attachment to outcomes. In fact, research from positive psychology suggests that people who focus on things like gratitude, mindfulness, and acceptance are happier than those who relentlessly pursue positive emotions. These practices help us appreciate the small joys of life: a good conversation, a beautiful sunset, a quiet moment of reflection. They shift our focus away from a fixed idea of happiness and towards a richer, more nuanced experience of life. But that requires a willingness to embrace discomfort, uncertainty, and even pain. It requires us to let go of the myth that happiness is a permanent fixture in our lives and accept that it's just one part of the human experience. So, as we stand on the treadmill of happiness, we must ask ourselves, are we truly running towards fulfillment, or are we chasing a mirage that will forever elude us? The answer may not be found in the next success, the next purchase, or the next milestone, but in our ability to find contentment in the present moment. In accepting life as it is, with all its imperfections, we live in a world dominated by images, messages, and symbols that promise happiness. We are surrounded by narratives that tell us what our lives should look like, what makes us worthy, what makes us successful, and ultimately, what will make us happy. But what if these messages are not designed to help us, but to manipulate us? What if the obsession with happiness is just a tool used to shape our desires, control our behavior, and sell us products? Consider, for a moment, the sheer scale of the media industry. Every day, we are inundated with thousands of messages, from the commercials on TV to the sponsored posts on Instagram, from the blockbuster movies to the viral memes. The vast majority of these messages center on one central theme: that happiness is just one click away, that if you buy this car, you will feel free. If you drink this soda, you will feel youthful. If you wear these clothes, you will feel confident. Happiness, in these cases, is marketed as a product, and you, the consumer, are its target. The very structure of modern capitalism thrives on this notion. Companies don't just sell goods, they sell lifestyles. They sell a vision of life where happiness is a commodity, something that can be acquired and consumed. It's not about the product itself. It's about what that product promises. Take, for example, the rise of social media. Platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok have transformed our daily lives into constant streams of curated images, designed to project an idealized version of happiness. Everyone seems to be living their best life. Perfect selfies, expensive vacations, beautiful homes, and at the heart of it all, the unspoken message is clear. If you want to feel fulfilled, you need to look like this. You need to be happy, or at least appear to be. But here's the kicker: the more we buy into this imagery, the more disconnected we become from the reality of our own lives. Social media doesn't show us the full picture. It only shows what we want to see: the good moments, the highlights, the moments of success. The pain, the doubts, the struggles, those are hidden away, tucked behind filters and hashtags. This creates a powerful psychological trap. We start to measure our own worth against these carefully constructed images. The happiness we see on others' faces becomes the benchmark for our own self-worth. We're not just chasing happiness anymore. We're chasing the illusion of someone else's life. But it doesn't stop there. The media doesn't just create a false image of happiness. It also amplifies the pressure to attain it. Watch a commercial for a luxury product, and you'll see a happy, attractive person enjoying life in a beautiful setting. Their life seems perfect, effortless, and in that moment, it feels as if all of their happiness is tied to the product being sold. Buy this, the commercial seems to say, and you too can have the life you've always dreamed of. This isn't accidental. It's a psychological tactic called emotional branding. Advertisers know that the key to selling a product isn't simply appealing to logic. It's appealing to our emotions. They tap into our desires, our fears, and our insecurities, offering a vision of happiness that's just one purchase away. It's a direct appeal to our deepest, most vulnerable aspiration, and it works. But the deeper question remains: how did happiness become such a powerful commodity? How did we get to the point where the pursuit of happiness was tied so closely to consumption? The answer lies in the rise of consumerism, a system that links personal identity with material wealth. This began to take hold in the mid-20th century, as the Industrial Revolution reached its peak and advertising took off. It was during this period that the modern concept of lifestyle advertising began to take shape. Companies realized that in a world of mass production, people weren't just buying products. They were buying a way of life. Take the example of the American dream. In the post-World War II era, American society was built on the promise that anyone, through hard work and determination, could achieve success, symbolized by a house with a white picket fence, a stable job, and a happy family. But as consumerism took hold, the meaning of success began to change. No longer was it about freedom or virtue. Success became about possessions. The new American dream was defined not by what you contributed to society, but by what you could buy. This shift in the cultural narrative was profoundly transformative. Happiness, which had once been seen as a result of personal virtue, moral effort, and existential fulfillment, was now something to be acquired, not through personal growth, but through material consumption. You didn't need to cultivate wisdom or deep relationships anymore. All you needed was the right car, the right clothes, the right house. Happiness became the product of your ability to consume. Fast forward to today, and the influence of this model is more pervasive than ever. We are constantly encouraged to seek happiness through consumption, whether it's by upgrading our gadgets, taking expensive vacations, or keeping up with the latest fashion trends. We are told again and again that happiness lies just around the corner, just one more purchase away. But this idea is dangerous because it reduces happiness to a mere transaction. It turns life into a series of purchasing decisions where emotional fulfillment is equated with owning the right things. And what's worse, it creates an endless cycle of desire where we're never truly satisfied. The moment we attain something we thought would bring us happiness, it fades and we're left wanting more. The feeling of joy is always temporary, and the more we depend on external possessions to fulfill us, the emptier we feel when the novelty wears off. This is why, in the face of unprecedented wealth, many people feel more disconnected than ever. They have the latest gadgets, the nicest homes, and yet they're left with a lingering sense of dissatisfaction. They've bought into the narrative that happiness can be purchased, but they've never been told that true fulfillment comes from within. So, we return to the question, what are we really chasing when we strive for happiness through consumption? Are we pursuing the things we truly value, or are we simply buying into a system designed to make us feel incomplete unless we keep spending? The truth is, happiness, as it's sold to us, is a lie. It's a mirage, a product that companies have successfully convinced us to chase. But the more we pursue it, the further it moves from our grasp. The pursuit of happiness, in its modern, commodified form, isn't just ineffective, it can be deeply toxic. While the constant push for self-improvement and the attainment of personal happiness might seem innocent on the surface, beneath it lies a darker reality. We are led to believe that happiness is something to be earned, acquired, or perfected, that it's the ultimate achievement of a life well lived. But in this pursuit, we inadvertently create a system where suffering is stigmatized, failure is demonized, and dissatisfaction becomes a permanent part of our emotional landscape. The first sign of this toxicity is in how we view emotional states that are considered negative. Sadness, anger, anxiety, grief. These emotions, which are a natural part of the human experience, have been relegated to the margins of society, viewed as something to be avoided at all costs. The more we chase happiness, the more we come to see these emotions as failures, as obstacles on the road to perfection. We're told that if we're not happy, something is wrong with us. If we're not happy all the time, we've failed. This, in turn, leads to emotional repression. Instead of accepting our feelings and processing them in healthy ways, we suppress them in an effort to fit the mold of perpetual positivity. The pressure to always be happy can trigger anxiety and self-judgment, making us feel inadequate. When we experience any form of distress, we become trapped in a cycle of shame, where we constantly push ourselves to be something we're not: perfect, happy, unfazed. The result is not a life of freedom, but a life of chronic stress and self-inflicted pressure. The more we try to be happy, the less we're able to experience true emotional depth. We are so focused on the goal of happiness that we forget to live fully. Happiness becomes the end of the road, an unattainable finish line we will never cross, and this unrelenting pursuit ultimately makes us more unhappy. But there's something even more insidious: the way happiness is tied to our sense of self-worth. In today's world, if you are not happy, you are seen as weak, broken, or unworthy. Your worth is no longer measured by your character, your ability to care for others, or the depth of your thoughts. Instead, it's measured by how you feel, how happy you appear to be. Take, for example, the rise of mental health discussions in the past decade. While it's a necessary and overdue conversation, it's also been co-opted by the same cultural forces that commodify happiness. Mental health is now a marketable issue, and while this has brought greater awareness, it has also, paradoxically, added to the pressure. The rise of self-help culture and wellness movements often wrapped in a veneer of positivity, places the onus on the individual to solve their own unhappiness, turning personal struggle into a personal failure. It encourages people to believe that if they aren't happy, it's because they haven't yet unlocked the right tool, the right mindset, or the right product. Think of the explosion of apps, therapies, and courses all promising to help you be happy. We are told that it's not enough to simply exist. We must constantly optimize, improve, and enhance our emotional state. Meditation apps, productivity hacks, fitness challenges, and self-help books all claim to have the keys to happiness. And while these resources are not inherently harmful, they participate in a larger, more troubling narrative that happiness is something to be perfected. And if we fail to achieve it, we have somehow missed the mark. This culture of constant self-improvement isn't just exhausting, it's alienating. It leads to the erosion of authentic human connection. Instead of sharing our vulnerabilities, our struggles, and our imperfections, we hide behind an idealized version of ourselves. We present the polished, happy facade, the version that conforms to societal expectations. As a result, we lose touch with what makes us human, the ability to embrace the full spectrum of emotion, including pain, disappointment, and fear. But there's something even more dangerous lurking beneath the surface of this happiness industrial complex, the commodification of self-worth. Happiness in this culture has become a measure of success, an indicator of how well we're doing in life. If we're not happy, we're not succeeding. The focus on happiness as a personal achievement has given rise to a happiness hierarchy, where people judge themselves and others based on their ability to embody positivity. The happier you are, the more successful you appear. The unhappier you are, the more flawed you seem. This obsession with self-optimization and the constant pursuit of happiness creates a society where people are not allowed to be themselves. They are told they must perform. The expectation is that everyone must constantly chase happiness, and if they fall short, they are failures. It transforms the pursuit of well-being into a self-destructive rat race, where emotional vulnerability is perceived as weakness, and the full complexity of the human experience is reduced to a binary of success and failure. But perhaps the most toxic aspect of this entire pursuit is that it disconnects us from something deeper. The idea that life's meaning is not found in constant happiness, but in the search for truth, authenticity, and personal growth. The moment we shift our focus from happiness as an ideal to happiness as a process, we free ourselves from the tyranny of perfection. We realize that there is beauty in struggle, value in discomfort, and growth in suffering. This doesn't mean we should seek out pain for its own sake, but it does mean that we can begin to accept it as a natural part of life. To seek happiness at the cost of everything else is to lose sight of life's richness. The pursuit of joy is not about a destination. It is about a journey of discovery, one that requires embracing the full complexity of the human experience. Happiness is fleeting, but meaning deep. Transformative meaning comes from something much more enduring: the ability to live with authenticity, to confront suffering with courage, and to find purpose in the process of becoming. The truth is, the pursuit of happiness, as it's often defined, is not only unfulfilling, but it can also be dangerous. It encourages us to ignore the richness of life's emotional spectrum in favor of a shallow, unattainable ideal. It leads us to believe that we are failures if we are not constantly happy. But in reality, the true path to fulfillment lies not in the pursuit of happiness itself, but in the acceptance of all that life offers, the good, the bad, and everything in between. If happiness is an elusive, fleeting ideal, then perhaps the real question we should be asking ourselves is not, how can I be happy, but rather, what is the true purpose of my life? In the search for meaning and fulfillment, we find that the pursuit of happiness, as it's often defined, isn't the answer. True fulfillment comes from engaging with life on a deeper, more profound level. It comes from embracing the journey, confronting challenges, and seeking something more substantial than the ever-elusive pursuit of happiness. The search for meaning is at the heart of human existence, woven into the fabric of every culture, philosophy, and religious tradition. From ancient Greek philosophers like Socrates and Aristotle to existential thinkers such as Viktor Frankl and Jean-Paul Sartre. The concept of meaning has been a central theme in the exploration of the human condition. These thinkers recognized that human life is marked not just by a search for pleasure or happiness, but by a desire to make sense of our existence, to understand why we are here and how we can live authentically. Take, for example, Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, whose experience in Nazi concentration camps shaped his groundbreaking work on meaning. In his seminal book Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl argues that the pursuit of happiness, or the avoidance of suffering, is insufficient for finding true fulfillment. He posits that it is the search for meaning, even in the most harrowing of circumstances, that provides individuals with the strength to endure. Frankl writes, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." For Frankl, the pursuit of meaning is not just a psychological need but a fundamental human drive. It is a deep, existential yearning that goes beyond mere survival or momentary pleasure. People who find meaning in their lives, he suggests, are far more resilient in the face of suffering and hardship. They possess a sense of purpose that transcends fleeting emotions and material concerns. This search for meaning, Frankl argues, is essential to our psychological well-being. The core idea here is that meaning is not something that can be acquired through external circumstances, nor is it something that can be dictated by others. Meaning is deeply personal and must be discovered through individual experience, reflection, and growth. It's found in how we respond to life's challenges, how we engage with the world around us, and how we cultivate relationships and pursue goals that resonate with our values. In contrast to the shallow pursuit of happiness, meaning is rich and complex. It is not a destination, it is an ongoing process of discovery. This is where we begin to understand why chasing happiness, in the conventional sense, can feel so hollow. If we base our sense of self-worth and contentment on transient emotions and external factors, we risk losing sight of what is truly meaningful. Happiness is a momentary feeling, but meaning is enduring. It sustains us over time and provides a sense of direction in life. To find this deeper sense of fulfillment, we can look to the philosophical traditions that emphasize purpose over pleasure. The ancient Greeks had a profound understanding of this. Aristotle, for example, argued that the highest human good is eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or living well. For Aristotle, true fulfillment does not come from momentary pleasures, but from living a life of virtue and reason, one that is aligned with our highest potential as human beings. This kind of flourishing involves cultivating qualities like courage, wisdom, and compassion, and living in accordance with our moral values. Happiness, in this view, is not something we chase, but something that arises naturally when we live a life of purpose and integrity. In modern psychology, we also find a similar emphasis on meaning. Psychologist Abraham Maslow, famous for his hierarchy of needs, placed self-actualization, the realization of one's full potential, at the top of the pyramid. Unlike basic needs like food, shelter, and safety, which are necessary for survival, self-actualization is about becoming the best version of yourself. It involves growth, creativity, and the pursuit of meaningful goals. For Maslow, fulfillment is found in the pursuit of personal development and self-expression, not in the pursuit of happiness per se. Maslow's ideas align with the more recent work in positive psychology, particularly the work of Martin Seligman. Seligman's concept of flourishing, a state of thriving that goes beyond mere happiness, emphasizes 5 key elements: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. While positive emotions and pleasure are part of this equation, they are not the sole focus. Rather, Seligman argues that a fulfilling life requires us to engage deeply with life, to connect with others in meaningful ways, and to pursue goals that are aligned with our sense of purpose. The key takeaway from these philosophical and psychological frameworks is clear. Fulfillment is not about the avoidance of discomfort or the constant pursuit of happiness. It is about living a life that has meaning and purpose. Meaning comes from the ability to reflect on our experiences, learn from them, and use them to grow as individuals. It arises from our connections with others, our contributions to society, and our ability to live authentically. But how do we start the journey toward meaning? It begins with a willingness to engage with life in a deep and authentic way. We must be willing to confront the challenges, the uncertainties, and the difficulties that life throws at us, not as obstacles to happiness, but as opportunities for growth. This means embracing vulnerability, accepting imperfection, and recognizing that life is not always about feeling good, but about becoming the best version of ourselves. It means accepting that pain and suffering are part of the human experience, but that they do not define us. We also need to cultivate practices that help us connect to our deeper sense of purpose. This might involve engaging in activities that reflect our core values, such as volunteering, pursuing a passion project, or spending time with loved ones. It might mean asking ourselves tough questions. What do I care about? What am I willing to fight for? What do I want my life to stand for? These are the kinds of questions that lead us beyond the superficial pursuit of happiness and into the realm of true fulfillment. Moreover, finding meaning requires us to move beyond individualism. While personal fulfillment is important, it is also deeply connected to our relationships with others and our sense of community. True fulfillment arises when we find ways to serve others, to contribute to something greater than ourselves, and to build bonds that transcend the ego. It is through these connections, these shared experiences of love, empathy, and support, that we begin to experience the kind of fulfillment that gives life depth and significance. Ultimately, fulfillment is not about chasing an idealized vision of happiness. It is about engaging with life fully, embracing both its joys and its struggles, and finding purpose in the process of living. It is about creating meaning in a world that can often seem chaotic and indifferent. And while happiness may still come and go, the deeper sense of fulfillment that arises from living with purpose will sustain us, even in the most challenging of times. As we step back and reflect on the journey we've taken, we must confront a harsh yet liberating truth. The pursuit of happiness, as society defines it, is a trap. It is a trap that binds us to a never-ending cycle of striving for something we can never truly hold. The images of happiness we see in the media, the perfectly curated lives on Instagram, the gleaming advertisements promising a better life through the next purchase or self-help course, are not just unrealistic, they are harmful. They rob us of the beauty and depth of the human experience, reducing it to a fleeting emotional state rather than a complex, meaningful journey. Happiness is not the goal, it is the byproduct of living authentically, of embracing life's full range of experiences, both the highs and the lows. The key to a fulfilling life is not in chasing after happiness, but in choosing to live with purpose, to find meaning in the smallest moments, and to grow through our struggles. Authenticity, not perfection, is the true source of fulfillment. To embrace authenticity is to accept ourselves as we are, with all of our flaws and imperfections. It is the recognition that being human means navigating the complexity of emotions, thoughts, and experiences, not as obstacles, but as essential parts of who we are. It's in this acceptance that we find true freedom. When we let go of the need to constantly be happy, we open ourselves up to living a life that is richer, more connected, and more meaningful. We start to see that fulfillment doesn't come from a state of constant joy or contentment, but from living in alignment with our values, our purpose, and our truth. This shift requires critical thinking, the willingness to question the cultural narratives that define success, happiness, and well-being. It asks us to challenge the systems that profit from our dissatisfaction, from the endless cycle of self-improvement, and from our addiction to happiness. We must ask ourselves, what is the price we are paying for this relentless chase? And is it worth it? As we conclude, we are reminded that the search for meaning, not happiness, is what gives life its richness and depth. Meaning is found in the relationships we nurture, in the work we dedicate ourselves to, in the challenges we overcome, and in the moments of quiet reflection that allow us to connect with our true selves. So, let go of the illusion, stop chasing happiness, and instead, embrace the messiness of life. Embrace authenticity. The true path to fulfillment lies not in the pursuit of joy, but in the journey of self-discovery and personal growth. It is in the acceptance of ourselves, with all of our flaws, contradictions, and complexities, that we find the real meaning of life.